Welcome to Rewatch and Rank. On this channel, we rewatch older TV shows, provide a summary and opinion on the episode before ranking each episode against each other. And today's episode is One Piece East Blue Saga Baratie Arc, Episode 30, Departure. Sea Chef and Luffy travel together. Episode in a nutshell is a brief reminder of what happens in this episode. So basically at the start of this episode, Luffy wakes up after the fight with Don Craig, and Sanji gives him the updates of what Gin said before he left, and that everything is fine now. Luffy once again asks him to join his crew. Sanji once again declines, saying that while he's not opposed to eventually leaving the restaurant, now is not the right time, as he wants to be acknowledged by Zeph and the other chefs, and he hasn't been able to achieve that yet. And Luffy then says that he'll give up. They then go downstairs where there's like a communal meal happening, and they are denied chairs at this communal meal and end up sitting to the side. Then Sanji's soup is tasted, and all of the chefs talk about how yucky and disgusting his soup is, and that basically drives him out of the restaurant. And once he's gone, they then reveal that they did this on purpose to try to drive him away because they feel that he should follow his dream to find all blue. And they all actually do acknowledge his cooking skills and abilities. And so, of course, he happens to hear this when he comes back through the door. And Zeph asks Luffy if he would be willing to take Sanji with him as a favor, and Luffy says no, not because he doesn't want Sanji to come, but because he's not going to force him against his will to come, so it has to be Sanji who makes that decision. Sanji then, while sitting outside the door contemplating what he has overheard, Yosuku ends up conveniently being half eaten by a shark that conveniently happens to be headed right to Baratie, and then happens to conveniently flop up on the deck in front of Sanji, where he is then able to deliver his message that they are heading towards Arlong Park. Or rather, he doesn't say Arlong Park, to be fair. He basically says they know where Nami is heading based on her direction, and they're going to need Luffy's help, so he's come to get him with no boat to take him back with. And this is when Sanji reveals that he, in fact, is going to join Luffy and his crew on their journey, and he apologizes for making the chefs perform some bad acting, and they are confused as to how he knows. And then he's like, I heard everything through the door, you bunch of dum-dums. And so he then starts packing, getting everything ready. Luffy and Yosuku wait on his boat, and all of the chefs gather to basically say goodbye. He flashes back to him and Zeph opening up the restaurant together and some of his early days at the restaurant before he then finally does exit. And at first he's going to be stoic about it, pretends he doesn't care. Patty and Carne, they attack him to alleviate their grudges and are soundly beaten by his kicking skill, and then he makes it almost to the boat before he ends up breaking down, and he turns around, cries, thanks, Zeph, for everything, says he's going to miss them all. They say they're going to miss him. Zeph calls him a dum-dum because men are supposed to leave without saying a word, apparently. And he then, bawling his eyes out, gets on the boat, and then Luffy announces that they will set sail, and they begin their journey away from Baratie. Meanwhile, we then, at the very last scene of the episode, see Nami once again standing at the front of the Going Merry, and we see her approaching an island, and we see the flag, but we do not, at this point, unless we're rewatchers, know where she is heading, only that it does, in fact, fly its own flag. So now that we are we have been reminded about what happened in the episode, it is now time to rank the episode. As always, we'll be ranking on our two ranking lists, the mostly objective ranking followed by the personal ranking. So on our mostly objective rank values for this episode, I didn't find that there were any negatives to the episode, and what I did think applied to the episode was first we have our successful emotional impact, which I think is Zeph and Sanji's goodbye. How they try to be stoic, but then they both end up crying, and how they're flashing back to all of those really meaningful moments. You know, Zeph cutting off his leg so he could go and save Sanji's life, their harrowing experience starving together on the sea, opening the restaurant together, basically Zeph raising Sanji from when he was a child, passing on his fighting style, passing on his cooking skill, passing on his dream to find all blue, and now Sanji finally accepting going to take those skills and complete their shared dream to try to find all blue with Luffy. I thought all of that was extremely meaningful, and it did make for a successful emotional impact when they were saying goodbye, and everyone started crying, and so I think that is worth the 3 points. And then the other points were, of course, the multi-arc main character development, which is Sanji officially joining the crew with Luffy, becoming a Straw Hat Pirate, and that is, of course, worth 4 points, bringing this episode to a 7 out of 10. So this episode is the last episode of the Bharati arc, meaning that our list of ranking episodes for this arc is now completed, and our definitive list on our mostly objective ranking, in first place we have Past of the Three Swords, The Promise Between Zoro and Kuina. Second, the famous cook, Sanji of the floating restaurant. Third, Hawkeye's Mihawk, Swordsman Zoro falls into the sea. Fourth, Zeph and Sanji's ambition, The Sea of Dreams All Blue. Fifth, outcome of a deadly battle, The Inner Spear. Sixth, the emergence of the superb kicking skill, Sanji versus the Iron Wall Pearl. In seventh, we have Departure, Sea Chef and Luffy travel together, which is this episode. Eighth is An Unexpected Guest, Sanji's Food and Gin's Grace. Ninth, Protect Beretti, the Great Pirate Zeph the Red Leg. 10th, The Cold-Hearted Demon, Pirate Fleet Battle Commander Gin. 11th, The Greatest Pirate Fleet, Captain Don Craig. And then in 12th, we have I Won't Die, Conclusion, Luffy versus Craig. Now, my personal ranking for the episode. I like that it was a nice, calm recap episode, but it still had a plot purpose in that we officially get Sanji agreeing to be part of the Straw Hat crew after the chefs decide to play a mean trick on him, which honestly, I'm like, why would they do that? Because literally at the start of the episode, Sanji gets this huge boyish grin on his face, talking about all blue and how amazing it is to Luffy after declining to join him once again, and Zeph is literally on the deck right above them listening to how Sanji says he cannot become part of Luffy's crew yet because he wants to be acknowledged by Zeph and the other chefs before he thinks he can leave, and he hasn't been yet, and the others are not dependable enough, so he is not going to leave. Then they stage this whole fake, his soup's so gross play acting, which is obviously fake because Sanji didn't make a mistake on the soup, and even like Luffy's like, the soup is delicious, that he has to overhear. But what I think probably got him to leave wasn't their stupid bad acting, be mean play that they were putting on. It was the fact that when he came back to listen at the door, they all acknowledged how amazing his cooking is and how much he can achieve if he agrees to leave and how they want him to be able to follow his dream and blah, blah, blah. And it's like that meaningful stuff that he heard through the door. You should have told him that. He probably would have left without the whole stage play. But I digress. I did think that that was kind of a funny moment. I have to say, I d- Yosaku makes it to Beretti to warn Luffy and bring him back inside the mouth of a shark. And I just sit there and I wonder, how did that happen? Because first off, he came back without a boat because he had set off on the same boat as Johnny, Usopp, and Zoro. So was he just like expected to like swim all the way back to Baretti? Of course he got eaten by a shark. But then also, how convenient is it that this shark that he got half eaten by just so happened to also be heading towards Baretti and then just happens to jump on the deck? Like, I'm just saying that's a very, very, very outlandishly lucky set of circumstances that Yosuke made it back to the restaurant, and genuinely, what were they thinking making him swim? But all's well that ends well. He gets there. They use Sanji's boat. Sanji had a boat this whole time. Don't know where it was floating during the battle, but it's there now. And they get to leave on it. Luffy gets to stock a sack of meat from the fridge before they go so that they have food on their journey. And then, of course, like I said, the main meat and potatoes of the episode really was that goodbye sequence between Zeph and Sanji. Even Sanji kind of going through the ship and, examining the photo on his nightstand of him and Zeph opening the restaurant, the flashbacks to them arriving at the restaurant for the first time, him learning how it parallels both of them in the present, how Sanji then takes a look at, the kitchen one last time that's empty because all the chefs are waiting to say goodbye to him, the empty dining room, like kind of having his like greatest hits and moments. I loved that part. But ultimately, I still only gave it a 7 out of 10 because while it was emotionally successful, while Sanji is officially joining the crew, that outlandishly weird lucky circumstance of Yosuku's kind of was like my suspension of disbelief has been a little bit dented by this circumstance. And also, ultimately, like, not a lot necessarily happened. It was very flashbacky, very focused on one particular instance, but it was like 20 minutes long on that one instance, which, again, it was a great instance, successful emotionally, but I don't think I could give it more than 7, which is why I gave it 7. And so that brings us now to our final personal rankings. And again, this is the last episode of this arc, so it is now definitively completed, this arc's personal ranking list. In first place, we have Past of the Three Swords, The Promise Between Zoro and Kyuna. Second, Zeph and Sanji's Ambition, The Sea of Dreams All Blue. Third, The Famous Cook, Sanji of the Floating Restaurant. Fourth, Hawkeye's Mihawk, Swordsman Zoro Falls into the Sea. Fifth, Departure, Sea Chef and Luffy Travel Together, which was this episode. Then we have sixth, The Emergence of the Superb Kicking Skills, Sanji versus the Iron Wall Pearl. Seventh, Outcome of a Deadly Battle, The Inner Spear. Eighth, I Won't Die, Conclusion, Luffy versus Craig. Ninth, The Cold-Hearted Demon Pirate Fleet Battle, Commander Gin. 10th, Protect Baretti, The Great Pirate Zeph the Red Leg. 11th, The Unexpected Guests, Sanji's Food and Gin's Grace. And then finally in 12th, we have The Greatest Pirate Fleet, Captain Dong Craig. That now brings us to our saga rankings so far, where each arc is ranked against each other, and because this is the end of the arc, we now know where Baretti falls. So on our mostly objective ranking, in first we have Romance Dawn arc with a score of 86.67%. The Orangetown arc with a score of 76%. The Baretti arc ended with a score of 82 out of 120, which gave it a score of 68.33%, putting it into third place. And then in fourth, we have Syrup Village arc, 64%. Now onto our personal ranking side. First place, Orangetown arc with 74%. Second was Romance Dawn arc with 66.67%. The Beretti arc also falls into third place on the personal ranking so far with 63 out of 120, giving it a score of 52.5%. And then Syrup Village also in fourth on the personal side with 49%. So basically, our series ranking so far, the score for the saga is determined based on each of the rank scores. So in the case of the Beretti arc on the mostly objective ranking, it scored 68 and change. 68, what was it, 0.33? I've already forgotten. Anywho, it was definitely 68, which puts it at a 5. So we'll add 5 to our total. And then, of course, we had our personal ranking where it was 52.5%, and that gives it a score of 2 when we get to the series rankings. So now here's our series ranking so far. And on the mostly objective ranking, adding our 5 now gives us a total of 25 out of 80 for the East Blue Saga so far. And on the personal ranking, we added 2, which gave us a score of 14 out of 80 for the East Blue Saga so far. And with that, we've now rewatched and ranked One Piece East Blue Saga Beretti Arc, Episode 30, Departure, See Chef and Luffy Travel Together. Like and subscribe if you'd like to, and I'll see you in the next episode.